Everybody, just taking this moment to come to you live with another vlogcast, podcast, whatever you want to call it. This is basically an opportunity for me to tell some stories. These videos or this series will essentially act as some pre-production for a book I'm writing, an autobiography that's going to talk about my experiences and how I got to where I'm at. And one of the most important years in my life was the year of 2011. And so I'm going to be talking about kind of the highlights of that year, what happened, and why it was such a significant year for me. So basically, the biggest achievement in 2011 was graduating film school. I went to the Minnesota School of Business. I enrolled, I think, in fall of 2009. Went there for a 2-year degree in digital video and media production. And graduated in March of 2011. Upon graduation, and actually it was probably, it might have been a week or two, maybe 3 prior to graduation, I got a phone call from a guy named Scott. And this fella told me that he had an outdoor show and that he was looking to hire someone to add to his production team. Now, I had really had no idea. When I went to film school, I simply went to school to learn the skills to become a self-made filmmaker. I've always wanted to be in business for myself. Ever since I can remember, back in high school, we took careers class trying to figure out what kind of job we wanted. My goals, always kind of oriented towards self-employment. So when I went back to film school in my mid-20s, I knew that I ultimately just wanted to have the skills to be able to produce my own outdoor television show. However, towards the tail end of my stint with film school, I got a call and an opportunity landed in my lap to go apply for this outdoor job. And what was really cool for me is Minnesota School of Business is a little different than other schools in that they don't have semesters per se. Like a typical 4-year college has 2 semesters, one in the fall, one in the spring. Minnesota School of Business actually did things in 4 quarters. There's 4 quarters of school a year, 12 weeks of class with 1 week off in between. So I attended school year round. And so it was interesting because although I went to class with maybe there's probably 20, 30 different kids, maybe 40 that I overlapped in a bunch of my film classes, but there was maybe only like a dozen or less of us that graduated the quarter that I graduated. So because there was a graduation every quarter, there's a lot of kids I went to film school with that I didn't exactly graduate the same time with. But regardless, I was the only one at the time when I was in film school that was going for anything outdoor television production. So I really had, among my peers, among my colleagues in school, I really had no competition in the outdoor space. So when Backland called me, I was basically a shoo-in for the job. And unfortunately, at that time, I didn't realize, I didn't know how much leverage I had at that time. And I was just excited to have an opportunity. So I was quickly eager to get hired at Backland. And the way the process went down was Scott called me right before graduation. We kind of had like a basic phone interview. And then he had a turkey hunt planned for early April in which I was to go tag along with him for 5 days as him and his co-host for the show, Dean, a buddy named Dean Waverneck. They were on a 5-day turkey hunt, kind of a survival type show where they were trying to catch, clean, cook. They were only able to eat what they were able to find, forage, catch, kill. So it was kind of a neat experience. And so my first professional filming gig was a turkey hunt in Nebraska, and it was absolutely epic. We chased some birds around, had a lot of fun, had some close encounters. Scott is a big, or I should say was, I don't know if he still is, but was a big traditional archer. He liked to make his own arrows and arrowheads. And so this particular turkey hunt, he was using his own self-made arrows and his longbow. And that requires a little bit extra, you got to get really close to the birds. And unfortunately, he didn't kill a turkey that week, but we had an awesome time. And I learned a lot as a filmmaker. And honestly, it kind of was like my first real experience out into the world of like foraging and living off the land. I had never really done anything like that before. And so that particular week, I remember we caught some crayfish in a pond. We caught some bluegills that we ate, which of course I've eaten bluegills before. But we foraged some early spring stinging nettles. And we also went into a barn and killed a couple pigeons for food, and we ate those. So it was like I definitely opened myself to some new foods, and it was a really interesting time. And my entire time with Backland was actually a really unique experience because there's a lot of hunting shows out there. There's a lot of places I could have gone and worked and seen some cool stuff, but there's not a lot of people doing the traditional archery, you know, napping their own arrowheads. So that had a huge effect on me because Scott was a traditional archer, because he napped his own arrowheads and liked to get close to game. It was really a unique experience. So after that initial 5-day hunt in April, I think Scott probably offered me a job within the next week or so. So that 5-day hunt was essentially my application, which, looking back, if I were to mention to any other future filmmaker, I mean, yeah, it was obviously a great opportunity for me to land a job, but I basically worked for free for a week. It was a good way. Scott was very good at utilizing things like that on making, you know, he was a good bullshitter, and getting to take me out as a 5-day intern. I mean, I guess it was an expedited internship, really, but I got hired on at $23,000 salary in 2011. I did not think that was very much money at the time. When I walked away from the corporate world, I was making over 40, and you know, I was just excited to get a job, I guess, and get some experience. I did get to travel all over North America, but it really stung not really making much money and not really feeling like I was valued. But I learned a lot of lessons. I got to experience some really cool things with Backland, so I have no regrets. But shortly after getting hired and accepting the position in April, I decided that I would start in June. My sister was getting married that spring. Her wedding was June 11th, and I had, you know, just like some couple things to take care of before I moved out to Hutchinson, Minnesota to work for Backland. I started there in June, and right away, the first like month or so, I got to meet my buddy Josh Furley, who was working for him at the time. And Josh is an amazingly talented filmmaker. I was so fortunate to spend a month sitting alongside Josh, learning some of his editing techniques. I didn't get to do a ton of filming with him, but just in sitting and learning editing, I was able to learn, you know, I was able to figure out some techniques that helped me in the future. And so that summer, I really just spent every day in the studio editing, crushing episodes. We had shows that were coming on in the air starting in the third quarter, and unfortunately Josh kind of left in a haste and put me basically in charge of all the production of Backland, and it was kind of abrupt, and at that point a lot of responsibility was thrown on my shoulders, and I'm very fortunate that I was able to rise to the occasion and make some shit happen. And it was stressful for a couple weeks. Scott and I were definitely behind the 8 ball for a little while. Had to bust ass, put in a lot of extra days. And when hunting season came around in late August, our first trip to Wyoming for antelope was pushed back and shortened to just a 3-day hunt. But August kicked off hunting season, and yeah, we took our first trip out to central Wyoming and went on a 3-day antelope hunt. Again, Scott was trying to use his traditional archery equipment and a homemade arrow, and unfortunately the wind was just too big. The couple days we tried with the longbow, it was just too windy. He couldn't. I think he shot at a doe a couple times and missed. He ended up killing a buck with his compound, I think, on day 3. But that was just an awesome experience to get out west. That was my first time out west. Well, I went out west in 2010 for my demo, to shoot some stuff for my demo reel. I took a road trip, but that was my first experience hunting out west, so that was really cool. Right after our trip to Wyoming, we went out to Canada. We flew to Nova Scotia, spent a couple days there. We did some hiking. We hiked the Skyline Trail and Did some whale watching with Wesley's Whale Watching Adventures, I believe. I can't remember the exact name. I think Wesley was the name of our guide. And then we eventually took a ferry over to Newfoundland and went on, it was about a 7 or a 9 day moose hunt. And on day 3 of the hunt, I filmed Scott and his buddy Bill double up on 2 big old bull moose, which was just an absolutely incredible opportunity. So within my first 3 trips filming with Backland, the turkey hunt, the antelope hunt, and the moose hunt, 2 of the 3 were successful, and we shot a buck antelope and 2 big moose. So it was just, that first venture into the filmmaking was just absolutely epic. September came, we finished up the moose hunt, made it back to Minnesota, did a little more editing. Mid-September we flew out to Montana on my first ever elk hunt. And Montana, September of 2011, was arguably the greatest time of my life. First things first, we drove out to Montana from Minnesota, which in and of itself is like a 15, 16-hour drive. When you make that trip out west, it seems like it's such a long and such a pain in the ass drive across the Dakotas that when you finally get out to like where you can see, so you get out to like the Badlands and you start seeing some pronghorn and bison and elk. It's just, it's absolutely magical heading out west. I love it. I'll never forget the feeling. When we pulled up into Montana, the fields, the alfalfa fields down in the valleys of these mountains were just loaded with deer. It was an absolutely remarkable, incredible experience. That first trip to Montana, Scott ended up killing a big old mule deer buck. We were up camping at about something like 9,000, 10,000 feet, and we were up there for about a week. And on day 2 or 3, Scott killed a big old muley buck, and on the last day of the hunt, he missed 2 raghorn bulls. He missed a spike and a raghorn. So we did not kill an elk that first trip. We ended up going back out to Montana in late October, right around Halloween time. On that hunt, we took John Hirschbeck with, former Major League Baseball umpire John Hirschbeck. John killed a big old muley. This was with a rifle. He was mule deer hunting, shot a muley, and he shot a big old bull elk. Shot that bull elk at like 420 yards. Absolutely incredible. So that was an awesome hunt. Prior to the second trip to Montana, in October, we also went bow hunting in Nebraska, again on another flint quest in which Scott was trying to kill a deer with a self-made arrow. And we got really close, almost killed a doe. Absolutely epic adventure. Bummer that we didn't kill one. Nebraska is, I will say it, one of the most underrated states you could hunt. We only did a little bit of deer hunting there. We did turkey hunting and deer hunting, both in the northeastern part of the state. And that place, it just seems so game rich. And you don't really hear too much about Nebraska as far as a hunting state goes. It's got to be one of the most underrated states out there. But I had a couple of great times in Nebraska. Come November, we went out to Kansas and did some whitetail hunting, and this was some of the best deer hunting I'd ever seen. Of course, we were out there probably like November 7th through the 12th, somewhere around in there, like a 5 to 7 day hunt, right around prime time rut. And we had a couple real good close encounters. Scott ended up killing a buck towards the end of the hunt. The buck he shot was not one that he wanted to kill, unfortunately. Me, as a kind of an inexperienced hunter, I thought the buck was a shooter. I told Scott it was a shooter. He was sitting below me in the tree. He was a little excited. He shot. Ended up being a buck he didn't want to kill, which was a bummer because it made for a really awkward recovery. And honestly, that hunt right there in Kansas was one of the moments that really kind of left a bad taste in my mouth, and was one of the kind of leading reasons what led me out the door with Backland. But finally, our last hunting trip that I took with Backland was to Texas, and that was in December, and that was a really awesome hunt. That was about a 10-day hunt. He had a ton of tags to fill. Scott's wife came down, shot a couple bucks. It was interesting because he was dapping me up the whole time, telling me how fun this hunt in Texas was going to be. Oh, we're going to find all these sheds. You just wait. You're going to have an incredible time down there. Yada, yada, yada. Because, like, on a couple of these hunts that we've been on, like, I know that when we were out in Montana, I found a little mule deer shed, and we were in Nebraska, I found a little whitetail shed. So I had found a couple sheds out hunting with him earlier in the fall. And so when we were going to Texas, he just couldn't stop yapping about how awesome it was going to be, how many sheds I was going to find, and just how much I was going to love it. And it was incredible. I found, I think, 46 sheds in 9 days down there, and I actually spent time between hunts, midday, and whenever there was some downtime, I went hiking and looking for sheds. And it was towards the tail end of that hunt that I found this. Me and Scott were specifically walking looking for sheds, and I came across this big old deadhead of a big old 10-pointer. And I went running up to it and kind of like cut Scott off from it because I saw it kind of up in front of us. And I don't know if he just got really jealous or what, but he ended up taking all the sheds from me. He said I couldn't keep any of them. Said that he was going to keep them for aesthetics in the shop at the office. And that really chaffed my ass. Really, really left a bad taste in my mouth. And that was pretty much the last straw for me. That trip to Texas really showed Scott's true colors, and I just really didn't want to work for a guy like that. But it was a great experience. I got to hunt all over North America. Like I said, I went to Canada, I went to Montana twice, I went to Wyoming, Nebraska twice, Kansas, got to go to Texas. So I really got to experience some really cool things, film a lot of hunts. While we were in Texas, not only did Mary and Scott each shoot about 2 or 3 whitetails apiece, but Scott also got himself an axis deer. So all in all, my first experience with Backland Outdoors, my first filmmaking job, was incredible. I got to see some really cool things. I got to film and make some awesome episodes. And unfortunately, I didn't value myself like I should have in that job. If I would have demanded a higher salary, I might have maybe tolerated some of that bullshit. But overall, I think when you sacrifice some of your own values to go work for someone else, it really hurts when stuff that you don't really align with continues to happen. And that was just the case with Scott. I mean, it was really tough. It was a really eye-opening experience to kind of see into what outdoor television is. And most of it, a lot of what you see on TV is fluff, and it's just acting, and it's a lot of bullshit. And you really can't take what you see on TV too serious, especially hunting television. And that was my experience with Backland. I mean, I don't want to sit here and act like I have regrets, because I don't. I learned a lesson with every one of these situations, but it would have been great to have a little more guidance from school on how how to interview for a job, and what if I had known what the market rate for my services were, I could have probably negotiated a higher salary, which those are things they just don't teach you in school. They don't teach you how to, I don't know. Whatever, that's neither here nor there. It was a great experience for me. It really opened my eyes to seeing different parts of the country, and it definitely opened my eyes to what the outdoor industry is, and kind of, it really had an effect on me in regards to, living off the land, catch, cleaning, cooking, and, being in tune with nature. But that's all I got for now. I'm going to probably dive into some more of those stories at a later date, specifically some of those adventures like the Canadian moose hunt and probably the Rocky Mountain elk hunting. Those are a couple of adventures that I could definitely talk more on. But for now, that's all. I'm just happy to get a vlogcast in today. It's going to be my goal to try to put together one of these every single day for the next umpteen days. We'll see how it goes. But anyway, thanks for watching. If you want to hear more stories, please give me a shout. Hit up the comments. Tell me what you want to hear more about. That's all I got for now. Have a great day. Peace.